Pastor? Yes.
I just wanted to give a special thanks to Safe Horizons. After the explosion in East Harlem, the Mayor's Fund was collecting resources to help the victims of that incident recover. And Safe Horizons has been the organization that's been distributing funds to those who are impacted. And so they've been doing an incredible job, and just really wanted to thank them for all their work on that.
What you were just saying, because you were also downtown after 9/11, which is, I know, 12 and a half years ago, almost 13 years ago. Safe Horizon definitely made their positive presence now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great meeting.
Prior to getting the meeting started, for purposes of recording, we'd like to go around first, if everyone could identify themselves and their organization.
Catherine McVeigh Hughes, Community Board 1.
Vicki Barbero, Community Board 5.
Matthew Washington, Community Board 11.
Elizabeth Caputo, Community Board 7.
George Fernandez, Chairman, Signature.
Ricky Leon, Community Board 3.
Nick Diaz, Community Board 8.
Christine Berthez, CB4.
Kate Spalding, Borough President's Office.
Bill Riccobono, CB2.
Joe Garba, Borough President's Office.
Alvin Bonilla, Borough President's Office.
Alana Kramer, Councilmember Brown's Office.
Jeffrey LaFrancois from Councilmember Johnson's office.
Athena Moore, Borough President's Office.
Vincent Lou, Borough President's Office.
Sam Levine, Borough President's Office.
Penelope Cox, Borough President's Office.
Stephanie Arroyo, Melissa Margarito's office.
Martha Joanna, New York City Economic Development Corps.
Daryl Connolly with EDC.
Ashley Dennis, also with EDC.
Joseph Strong with Councilmember Ben Charles' office.
You made from Councilmember Margaret's office.
Sorry, Quinn at Councilmember Mendes' office.
Elizabeth Mates from Borough President's office.
Jesus Perez from the Borough President's Office.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the adoption of the April 17, 2014 Borough Board Agenda, which you should have before you and it's been emailed. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Next is the adoption of the March 20th, 2014 Borough Board Minutes, which were also emailed. Motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Next we have the Borough Board vote, resolution and after hours variance bill, a local law to amend the administrative code of New York City, of the City of New York in relation to after hours work authorization submitted by council members Mendez and Garatnik. There was a presentation at last month's Borough Board regarding this, and I know there's been an opportunity to present it to the various community boards, either at full or our executive session, and we have Dario here.
I've spoken to some community boards, and some had concerns regarding the schools and what would be done in that regards. I've spoken to CB12, CB10. I've received feedback from CB1. I just want to make sure that any other questions, rapid questions before you vote, can be answered. If you have outstanding concerns regarding this resolution or the whole package of legislation. It's not, the package is not detailed, it's encompassing, and it's more of a overarching legislation. It's not detailed, it's subject to amendments, obviously, once it goes to the committees.
Based on the feedback that you received from the community boards, are you making any amendments?
We'll probably do one in regards to schools. Yeah. And specific structures.
If I may, because you attended the executive meeting for CB12, and our land use committees actually, we followed their lead in this discussion, so they had a whole host of questions and concerns. So I guess my thing is you said that you're open to amendments, so then I'm wondering as because the resolution you should be receiving today. And it has, I'm sure, particular language, not the same language as in the original resolution. So are most of those
Do you have the resolution?
I don't have the one.
They didn't give it to you yet?
No,
Okay.
the one, so I couldn't.
Okay, so I will be sure to forward that final resolution with the language from CB12 as amended in our resolutions.
Any other questions? So motion to approve the resolution on the after hours variance bill?
So moved.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions?
Our committee meeting tonight, and the full board's meeting April 29th. So since there hasn't been discussion, we don't have a position, we abstain.
Okay, no abstention. Okay, motion for the resolution, passes. Cool. Next order of business, we have a presentation of the nut box lease at 2724 Broadway pursuant to 384B4, presented by the New York City Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you. Can I sit here? I'm Ashley Dennis from the EDC. This is Martha Joda and Daryl Connolly. Thank you for having us here tonight. We are presenting a lease for the nut box at 2724 Broadway pursuant to 384B4. We received a resolution from the Land Use Committee at CB7 last night. They did approve this project. It will go to their full board at the beginning of May, and then we'll come back to the borough board once we have a resolution from their full board for a vote on this item. However, we do not have a vote today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Martha to present the details of the lease.
Good morning. The property that we're talking about is located between 104th and 105th Street. It's one block away from the 103rd Street subway station, and it's approximately 950 square feet and approximate to many shops, dining, and services. We currently have an executed term sheet for a lease of 5 years with a 5-year option to renew. The base rent is about $130 per square foot, and that amount will escalate annually during the initial period and also through the option period. The space will be a retail space that will be used to sell mixed nuts, dried fruits, snacks, spices, and coffees. The tenant intends to create 6 to 9 full-time jobs and has offered to pay their employees a living wage. The Nutbox is a locally based business with 3 stores currently in the city, and there are plans to expand to 10 stores in the next 2 years. We'll be happy to take any questions.
So I'm curious, what do they mean by they're gonna pay a living wage? What does that mean? Like clarifying what?
It's $11.20 per hour.
Okay. So they're gonna pay $11.20 an hour.
That includes the benefits portion. So I think it's roughly $10.20 or $10.30 plus benefits.
Christine?
So my question is, why is EDC involved in renting in this?
Sure. This is a property that's actually owned by the city. The EDC manages 2 commercial spaces on the ground floor. And so the upper floors are managed by the Department of Homeless Services.
Okay. And I mean, is there a need for fresh food or whatever? I mean, this is nuts. I mean, what's the deal with nuts?
They came before us to CB7. I mean, I'll let you guys answer, but
yeah,
just the background on what they came to CB7, I guess, last year about the same space, and I understand the process was that it did, when EDC is involved, it did come to our board, and then it would go through you, but it was for actually a women's clothing store, affordable women's clothing store, and we didn't hear really anything more about it after we discussed it, and then we found out that it was this new store, and I think you did a reasonably good job last night of convincing our land use committee about the use of the space. But.
Sure. You know, this isn't a typical property that EDC handles. This is something to basically we have 2 spaces there. At one point in time, it was leased to Common Ground Ventures, who operated the Ben and Jerry shop, and also leased it out to Hot and Crusty. So when the Hot and Crusty, when the Common Ground Ventures lease was terminated, we then had this new space to lease, and so that's what we're doing here. Is we're leasing to a new tenant.
I'm not clear on what the guidelines are for the involvement of EDC, because, you know, like I'm in CB2 and we have a major problem with 19 East Houston that's been promoted by EDC for a long time, not sure why. So I'm just wondering, I mean, do you just get involved in things that you feel like getting involved in, or what are the rules?
You know, this came about probably over 10 years ago, and this property was turned over to us from DCAS. at least, you know, these two space leases.
ECAS is what, I'm sorry. From who?
Citywide
Citywide administrative services.
No, but I mean, why is that? I mean, I know the city owns a lot of buildings and they have some commercial space and they rent some space. So why does sometimes EDC get involved and sometimes
So
not?
we manage property through a master lease with the city of New York. This is one of those properties, for instance. However, the project that you're talking about on East Houston Street is actually a little bit different. It's a property that is owned by the city, is leased to MTA and is being sold by MTA. We're just helping facilitate that transaction. It's not an EDC property.
Well, in my opinion, you're pushing that transaction. You're not just facilitating it, and there's a big difference. You know, there's one thing to facilitate between city agencies if you feel that there's a need, but you know, there's an advocacy role, which I understand for small businesses. I think it's very positive that EDC does that, but for some of these big developers, and I'm not sure what this is all about, I just wonder who decides when EDC will be involved and when they won't.
This is a very small retail space. It's about 950 feet.
Yeah, but they're going to be 10 stores, you said.
I'm sorry, what's that?
This guy's going to expand to 10 stores.
No, he has 3 locally based stores. This would be one of those stores. He does have plans to expand. However, this is completely separate from the project that you're referring to in CB2.
I know it's there. I'm just asking, what are the guidelines for EDC to become involved in these kinds of projects?
So, for instance, when you're talking about the project on East Houston Street, that's a project that the MTA asked us to get involved in. Whereas this is a property that we manage on behalf of the city of New York. So they are completely different and separate.
Okay.
Any other questions in relation to the,
You know, I just want to be, because I think there's questions about why you're in, you know, why you're in the nut business, but it seems to me you're, but this is, from what I can see, that you manage this property, the city owns this property, correct? So you're obligated, or you're handling this on behalf of the city, right? So you went out and found a tenant to fill this spot, okay? Can you just talk a little bit about sort of why you picked that? You have to pick someone, right? So you have to come up with someone for the spot. But just to talk a little bit about how you go about doing that and why this makes sense and so on, and you know, that might give some people an understanding of what's going on.
Sure. The space became vacant almost 2 years ago, and we put out a request for offers, and we solicited bids. I guess about a year ago, we had this Brandy Melville. We entered into a term sheet after negotiating and selecting them over other potential tenants. And in this particular process, we did the same thing. We kept the RFP out on the street, and we looked at several potential retailers for this particular space. The Nut Box was the highest rental value, coming to the city. We also like that it's a locally owned business. This particular group also has another business up in the Bronx called Terrafina. They're importing nuts and fruits, and they're expanding tremendously. And we like this particular concept because they're expanding throughout the city. It's locally owned. We thought that it was a great story. It's a small business, but operated by some very successful people operating another business.
Okay.
you had another hand?
Well, I think the principle of renting to the highest bidder is not necessarily the best idea. I mean, considering that we have needs for local store, for fresh food, we have all these needs, and those needs are not going to be met by renting to the highest bidder. So maybe, to your point, we have to change the guidelines here. I mean, I think these people are doing the best job they can under the current guidelines, but they are inherited guidelines, and maybe we need a different set of guidelines.
No, I just want to respond to that, because it seems to me, though, if you don't rent to the highest bidder, I'm not sure how you manage a process like that. But the second issue is, the money does go now this money will go into the city coffers, right? And that money gets used by the city, right? You essentially want to generate income here that can go to worthy projects or whatever that the city can spend. So there's an argument to be made that maybe that is a good way. I'm not sure I'm convinced that. The problem, I think, with not having the highest bidder is then it becomes more arbitrary in terms of how you select someone to take that space, and it does seem to me like they've done some diligence in terms of what type of business. I mean, this idea of a locally owned business is good. This is not a Dwayne Reed moving in here or
I
whatever.
get it. And
I like
agree
this
with
idea.
you that, I agree with you
Yeah.
that this is, in the scheme of things, it's not a bad one. But you could have overarching guideline which says, you know, we are more concerned about affordable food and affordable certain things, and therefore, you know,
and the rent is just one of the things that we look at. As Daryl was saying, we like that this is a locally owned business. We like that they're committed to paying a living wage. We like that they're committed to hiring locally. So those are the criteria that we look at and we feel are very important. I understand that there are concerns about fresh fruit and produce in this neighborhood. However, given the size of this retail and the type of responses that we got, that wasn't something that we could move forward with at this location.
But you know, I'm assuming there was an RFP that assigned. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Finish your statement.
No, I'm just assuming there was an RFP that assigned points to certain attributes, and only one of them should be the cost of the lease. I mean, if the city's serving the community, they should look at a lot of other things according to a scale and award something like this to a vendor that gets the highest number of points based on an RFP that, you know, sets out guidelines, and that we're just getting to the guidelines. You know, I'm not.
And we totally agree, and that's why I was just pointing out that this business is committed to local hiring, to paying a living wage, and to creating good jobs.
Yeah, in regards to the length of the lease, it says 5 years. Doesn't the city usually do longer leases? And my question is the minimum amount of years for the agreement? And if so, why did you, if it's such a good investment, then why do you only start with the 5 years and not 10 like you do with other properties?
This is something that the nut box requested was a 5-year with a 5-year renewal. So that's, we actually said in the RFP that we'd have up to, I believe, 10 years.
Okay.
So they chose to do a 5 and 5.
Just a clarification, because I was concerned when I read it was between 104th and 150th Street.
It's anywhere in there.
I was like, we got a real problem here.
That's a big nut store.
No, just in terms of the project, I think, look, ultimately, it sounds like Liz and Community Board 7 liked this and approved it, or at least preliminarily approved it, and it'll go to full board for approval. So that is of interest. You know, $10,000 a month is something that I wouldn't want to see in East Harlem, because a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that, and so I think making sure things make sense for each community is really critical in each area, because while 10,000 might be doable for the nut box, it certainly isn't going to carry water up here, which you all very well know.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, does this come back to Borough Board with a vote only by 7, and the electeds, we don't vote on it, do we?
Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
It's
Each
only
of
Board
the
7.
council members vote.
So I was
and
just,
then
and
seven.
this is just a comment, when I saw it, I'm thinking, why is this coming before us tonight for a presentation? And now that I'm hearing the questions and the comments, it's deeper in terms of the things that have been brought up. And is there anything we as a borough board collectively, all the community boards, can do to address the things that you've brought up and that Christine has addressed that have to do with the very,
Criteria.
guidelines and that sort of thing? Because we are listening to it for a good 15, 20 minutes today, and it would be nice if we could have some input based on the things that have been brought up thus far.
Yeah, something.
That's a good idea.
We have Jordan and Henry.
Yeah, so question for City Seven. In your community district, is this particular product, I know your committee passed it, but is this particular product a demand for your community or a need?
Well,
People want nuts.
I mean, I think there.
Well, I mean.
Well, I think there are two things. I think we were very attracted to the fact that there were going to be a lot of, a number of full-time jobs created, that they were hiring locally. I think that carries a lot of weight with our board members. I think that part of the neighborhood, certainly, I don't think there's not demand for it. I think that the alternative between putting a Dwayne Reed versus a store that is a locally operated and with an emphasis on trying to promote neighborhood and local jobs. I'm going to talk about in my report that we've been doing a lot of outreach to the local community about trying to hire youth for summer employment. This to me is a place that maybe would be amenable to hiring some young people from the neighborhood who could work during the summer. I think in general we felt like it was something that would be a boon to the community, and also something that the alternative of having the storefront just be empty for another year is something that we don't want to see.
One more. The AMI for your district. What is the AMI? The annual median income of the district.
Up there?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
40s, 50s, 60s. I'm just asking because for community district, based off the tax bracket of the AMI, is where you see people who invest in more organic food, more expensive food. And depending while it's a great concept, depending the community needs, it's cool that they're going to hire new people, but is it a need? I'm not on that board, but is it a need? Because if the community could benefit from healthier food at a cost that it's doable for them in particular income brackets, then to me that makes sense. To put a store that's only going to target people from a particular income bracket, meaning the rest of the community cannot benefit from walking in there to buy a pound of nuts because it may be $9.99 a pound, or it's like things we experience in higher end supermarkets where the people who live in the community can't shop there because they have to go to someplace else where the pounds are lesser. I'm just bringing that up for
No, that's fine.
conversation's
We
sake.
didn't see sort of a list of everything that the store is selling, but we got the sense that it wasn't going to be completely everything in the store was going to be completely.
I raise that
higher
because in our
products.
district, there's a need for healthier food but a reasonable price.
No,
Not-
same for us.
And one of the constraints that we have are the responses that we get, right? So in this case, there wasn't a fresh food operator who responded.
Okay.
And that might point to the question of like maybe
Where
we
did
can
you
work
go?
together with you so
Right.
that there can be better outreach done the next time,
Yes.
so that there are a broader range of responses.
That's
I mean,
really-
certainly from the places that you presented to us last night, we thought this was the best alternative of the responses.
Because
that's a good
that's the
idea.
point. Is
Yeah.
We have a question here.
Yeah, I just want to say, I work close to the EDC like most of us are, and I just wanted to encourage EDC to continue to let us know about projects from the Genesis before the RFP comes out, so that we can sit down and look at what is needed in our community. Maybe
Yes.
we can just create lists and have them ready.
Right.
But basically, if we know in time, then we can have major input. So I think that's good, and I do appreciate Ashley working with us so well.
That's a very good
That's a
idea,
very
thank
good-
you.
Thank you.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Does EDC send the RFPs to local elected and the community boards?
Yes, this was an RFO, and sometimes our leasing operation works differently than like our property sales and ground leases. But typically when we have an RFP on the street, I call each of your offices and make sure that you guys know about it. But I typically only call the local reps.
So not out, not
So for instance, I wouldn't have called Mendez's office in this instance since it was on the Upper West Side.
But you guys only call for specific items, not for everything that's you're ready to put on the market, correct?
Right. So like for this lease, for instance, what I think has been out for like, as Daryl was saying, over 2 years, right? There may have been some outreach done when it was first issued, but there was an ongoing outreach since 2 years ago.
And there's also been a change in city council member, so Mark, I don't know if Mark Levine's
I don't know if his office is here, but I have spoken with his office about this.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Next we'll turn to the Borough President's report. Many of the community board chairs received not so long ago a request from our office regarding identifying locations for possible affordable housing suggestions, and we'll have some more information on that from Deputy Borough President.
Thank you. I just want to thank all the community boards for your expedient responses to our request for potential sites for affordable housing in your community boards, we ended up with a list of about 130 sites, which was fantastic. We'll share the full list with everyone, but you know, all the boards were responsive. Some had sites, a couple did not, which we understand. It's just you know, a couple of boards. It's difficult to identify available sites for affordable housing, but I just want to thank everyone for their responses. We're working with the mayor's office as they come up with their plan at the beginning of next month, and this is going to be a big part of that in helping us identify to them that there are sites in Manhattan where new affordable housing can be developed. So this effort was very helpful to us, and thank you all for your responses.
And in addition to the input of the community boards, this effort is being supported by 2 working groups. Can you speak about the?
Sure, we assembled 2 working groups, one to identify how we can preserve the current affordable housing we have in Manhattan, and a second group made up of developers and affordable housing policy experts to discuss the barriers to building new affordable housing in Manhattan and how we can break those down and how we can come up with, you know, ways that we can build new affordable housing here in Manhattan. So, you know, these groups are continuing to work. We hope to come up with some recommendations that we can work with the mayor's office on to help them guide where they decide to build new affordable housing in the city. So we're trying to target and make sure Manhattan gets their fair share. So this is it's an ongoing process. We'll be talking to you as we go through it.
If we have an additional location, can we share it with you?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. It's not over.
Okay.
I lost it. Christine and Matthew?
Do you have representative of the community? Who is on the working groups?
It's mainly advocacy groups. You know, the preservation group. It's been you know, tenant advocates, and the development group has been. We have a couple of affordable housing developers, a couple of market rate developers, some affordable housing policy experts, Furman Center, folks like that are part of the conversations.
Thank you. Just in terms of affordable housing, as a part of the conversation, we have to talk about permanent affordability.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
East Harlem is a community that was ravaged by the folks opting out of the Mitchell-Lama program as these contracts were ended, and we have to provide affordable housing. It has to be the real estate community, government coming together, but as government has to mandate permanent affordability in projects because it's ridiculous.
Sure. No, whenever we have these conversations, the borough president highlights the amount of affordable housing we've lost over the last 10 years. And, you know, any new units have to take into consideration what we've already lost and replacing that and preserving what we still have left and then building on that. So that's definitely, permanent affordability is definitely the goal here.
Alright, when we talk about affordability, that's the one thing in our community, what's affordable in terms of market rate. And that's what you're considering affordability, am I right?
The definition of affordability?
Yeah, because, you know, I don't wanna say we need to start building low income, but that's one of the problems. Some of the affordable ones are too out of range for a lot of people in the CB 10 community, I'm sure 9, 10, 11, and 12 as well, and other communities. But that's one of the biggest concerns. While, you know, we're definitely supporting affordable housing, we're concerned about that affordability being too much for people in the community.
Yes.
So that's something I'm
That's definitely a big part of the conversation we're having is how do we regionalize what's affordable so that it matches the community we're talking about. So that's a big part of what we're looking at. Sure.
We have Jessica and Leslie.
Good morning. Just 2 things. Would it be possible to get a list of the participants who are going to be weighing in on their input or advice about the affordability throughout Manhattan?
Sure.
As far as the project is concerned?
Sure.
Who are the players? You said tenant advocate groups, other developers, etc. So it'd be nice to know who they are.
Sure, definitely.
Secondly, I just want to piggyback off Henrietta, that affordability should be based on the AMI of a community district. Many developers come in and they use the citywide AMI, which is, mine is closer to like 36. When the city comes up with it, it's like at 62, 60. And that really does not allow the opportunity for individuals there to get that affordability if the AMI is so high. So it doesn't quite work for my community district.
Right. I mean, that's one of the issues we're looking at. It's difficult, you know, the percentage of AMI you use for development is based on the funding sources, right? So we're trying to look at, well, can we change policy? Can we change the policy so that we can just base the development on the neighborhood and not just the funding sources? One of the things we're looking at. It's a very difficult issue. If it wasn't difficult, it would have been done a long
I'm just
time
happy
ago.
to hear that you are having that conversation about the needs of community districts and not a blanket statement for the whole city.
Exactly.
I appreciate it.
We absolutely have to figure out how we regionalize these developments so that the AMI matches the communities we're looking
Thank you
to serve.
very much.
It's really because where can we go to get sort of that data and information about how many units of affordable housing are in, our district versus Mitchell-Lama versus, is there a central place that you guys go to, or is that something that the borough
It's
president
scary how difficult it is to find this information.
Yeah. I
That's
just
the
wondered
problem.
what source is like the definitive source on, we're asked for statistics all the time and we can't really provide it.
It's very difficult to find. HPD, they try to do a good job to keep track of these things, but it's difficult to find. And some of these benefits get given to a developer, and in the past they've been transferred from one developer to the next and to the next, and so you lose track of where it is and where the housing is supposed to be built. And so it's tough to take stock of everything that's there now. Again, we're trying to work with the city. I think they're trying to figure that out themselves, so we're trying to help them do that. But I can't give you one website where you can go and find everything.
Just to Liz's question, it's one thing that we tackled, and actually working with the staff at the board office, we've been able to track that down. I can tell you that 51% of households in East Harlem are under 40% of AMI. So the information is out there, and we'd be happy to work with any board to help determine those income bands and what percentage of AMI the community is. So if anyone wants help with that, we can certainly help pull those numbers for all the communities. So we'd be happy to do that.
That's great. That's great. That'd be very helpful. Our goal in all these developments is to try to get as mixed a group of folks in these buildings as possible, to keep these buildings diverse, keep your neighborhoods diverse. So that's that would be the goal. But knowing what we're looking at is very helpful.
So we'd be happy to work on that for all boards.
Great.
In terms of second point in the borough president's report, the community board appointment process has concluded. So all of the members from your community board should have heard either way. And we look.
No, would it be possible to get a list of the updated board lists for all of our boards?
Yes,
I think that'd be great.
And we're looking forward to rolling out in May and June a community board development leadership series, community board leadership development series and trainings on land use and zoning, landmarks, parliamentary process, so that you'll look forward to receiving that from us in May and June for new community board members as well as current community board members who just haven't either had the opportunity to receive that training and orientations or just want to refresh their skill sets. Okay. In terms of
No, thank you everybody. I've just been to the Daffodil program, so I go to everything. The issue of affordable, I appreciate the discussion. I can tell you what we are trying to do, and this is me talking out of turn, is I appreciate all that de Blasio is doing, but I worry that we could end up with a lot of tall buildings, so we want to figure out the Manhattan way of affordable housing. So that's the only reason we're focused on this. And it's the same problem everywhere. Nobody has affordable housing. We want the AMI to be correct. I will say that Council District 6, it took HPD, Liz, to answer your question, 4 months to come up with what exists in the council district. I know Penny has that. That's it. My understanding is that's the only district in the city that has that kind of information, and it took them 4 months. So the city agencies do not have that information. Now, you have probably maybe more than anybody else does in East Harlem. But so we were working, we're gonna push them. I think that they need to do it, agencies need to do it. Because, I don't know that I can find every section A, 421A, et cetera. So, that we're gonna ask them to do for Manhattan, but it took them 4 months, and that was me sitting there like with a microphone. They got tired of me, so just 5 minutes before the hearing, I got like this. And then so we're just gonna keep pushing to try to come up with ideas. And if you have other people who want to weigh in,
there's no one person who knows how to build affordable housing in the city of New York, particularly Manhattan. So all ideas are welcome. For somebody who says, I really know what to do, we'd love to hear from you. It's nothing new. I mean, we're working a lot, Board 4 has done a lot in terms of recent opportunities, but as you heard, for 98 units of affordable co-op, there were 15,000 applications, I believe, something like that, and they were all legitimate. So you get the sense, you know what the problems are. I'd rather hear from you. I will tell you yesterday, I had such a great experience listening to Carmen Farina. You want to talk about somebody who has made a difference. She was no rhetoric for 45 minutes to a group of artists and art organizations at City College. And she went through what her, she was able to talk about Johnny and then the principal at like 10 schools that she'd been at in the last 2 months and how they related to art. And then she went through, 10 ideas for this group of how to get funding and how to work with principals and how to work with schools and what works in the school. It was really refreshing. And so I think one of the suggestions would be for the community boards, I know you're doing this, but Board 9 has a member sitting on the SLT of a school. Board 9 has a member, and she happens to be an artist, and she's sitting on this SLT. That school is ecstatic.
It's an SLT?
School leadership team, sorry.
Yeah.
And so the school leadership team is benefiting from that relationship. So we were hoping, up to the community boards, but to see if maybe at least one school in your district might have a member, again, it's a lot of time, I'm not gonna say it's not, to sit on the SLT, to see if you think that that could bring together, as a pilot, the community relating better to the schools. So some of the boards have tons of parents on them and it's a good relationship, but lots don't. So it's something to think about. I'd rather hear from you. We're working on a lot of different fronts. We've heard them from Aldrin and Joe and others. So why don't we just keep going?
All right, so we'll begin with council member reports. Council member Chen's office.
Did Ben speak already? Okay.
All right,
Ben is a member.
Come to us. Council member Kidd.
Thank you very much, President Brewer. I just wanted to touch base. It's been a while since I've been here in person. I'm really honored to have gotten a chance to work with Gail on the community board appointment process, and to all of you should have gotten over first. Actually, happy Passover. If anyone wants matzah, feel free to take some, pass it around. So we did this. This was from the March 3rd hearing. We had CB1, CB7, and CB2. Perfect. And we also had all 3 borough presidents and community boards from all 5 boroughs. So I put together this report. I felt that one of the best ways I could help reform is be a cheerleader for Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, as well as the others who are starting to take on reform. And so, did everyone get it? I'll pass these around, but you should have received it digitally because it would have been a little bit prohibitive to send out 118 of these. But if you can, the only thing that really matters is the first 3 pages, where there's an executive summary, and I just wanted to make sure I was here for any feedback. I know that certain parts of it, we had already introduced at the request of the borough president, 16 and 17-year-old, a resolution in support of that for the boards, and I understood that was a little bit.
Some people like it, some people don't, I know.
And, but there were other pieces to it. Just some quick summary is getting the word out, and just making sure that we do some targeted outreach. Recruitment of experts was an ongoing theme. In the absence of urban planners on every board, which is something I'm actually requesting in the council's budget response, we need members with specific skills. Geographic diversity, ethnic diversity, every single type of diversity that a community represents. CB1 specifically focused on the fact that neighborhoods are changing and we do need to reflect that. Youth representation. Actually, in reviewing the resolution and the law, if you have a youth and education committee, you can already appoint any aged youth, believe it or not, to those committees. The state law, public officers law does allow it. The resolution specifically only speaks to full members. Demographic data, this is something that this office has spearheaded, which is analyzing the applicants' websites and creating a centralized web infrastructure. It is something I'm hoping to work with the borough president and the mayor's CAU on, having a standardized online application. The Manhattan application is by far the most rigorous. requiring reappointment applications, and the borough president did something amazing by going through 12 community boards and analyzing attendance. On my own board, Board 8, we had high absenteeism, and we were able to work towards fixing that. Filling in term vacancies, right now the charter is pretty much silent as to how soon that can happen. By doing it within 30 days, we can fix that. Manhattan did the independent screening panel. I'm hoping to broaden that out, and a lot of this, just so you know, I'm chair of the Governmental Operations Committee, mostly because Gail Brewer did it before I did it, so I'm just trying to do a great job with it, and part of it is community boards. And then something a lot of people may have seen is the applicants who did not get reappointed or appointed, the borough president, at least for Manhattan, sent out engagement letters saying please get involved in other parts of the community, which was a best practice. Manhattan and the Bronx have conflict of interest disclosures. We're the only two boroughs that do, so trying to remove that out. Staten Island bans the appointment of staffers of elected officials. It also bans the appointment of members of a county party. So that's specifically the two, well, pretty much any of the parties that are on the ballot, and it's only the executive board of that county party, does not extend to political clubs. And then mandatory reporting, and then term limits, which actually Borough President Gail Brewer opposes. And she was actually the only borough president candidate to state so in her Citizens Union endorsement questionnaire. So that's everything verbally, and we do have the report. It's available at benkalos.com. Take as many questions as the borough president will allot time for.
We'll start with Joe.
Yeah, thank you, council member. I want to say your name right. It's Kellis, right?
Kellis.
Well, thank you. I just want you to know that Community Board 12 shall be, I shall be presenting a resolution in our executive committee for discussion. I just wanted to know, what is the timeline for us to weigh in on your resolution?
I think it's an open timeline. The reality is between April 1st and May 31st, there will be 1,475 appointments being made, and Manhattan Borough President has already made hers, but the borough presidents are still going through their process, and that is who we're trying to affect. I'm also trying to affect 21 brand new members of the City Council. So we have 4 new borough presidents, 21 new members, and part of why we've been doing all of this and why it's been so rushed is trying to make sure that as people engage in the new process, they don't feel like we're playing gotcha with them of like, haha, you did something wrong, now we got you. It's, hey, this is some great ways of doing things better. We'd really like you to look at this before you make your decisions.
Just one more. You stated mandatory reporting. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Sure. So there was previously a bill, but so the Citizens Union feels quite strongly that borough presidents should report to the council on how they make their appointments. And Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer has already been pretty much doing that pretty transparently. She's been sharing a lot of information, sharing who the applicants are, things like that. But this is for just the general process, and I think it's a chance for a lot of borough presidents to take a victory lap to share what their best practices are.
Thank you, sir.
We have a question on there.
Yeah, no, just a couple of comments. Actually, in terms of your comment, we had some members who had some high absenteeism. Probably not a fair depiction to say we have high absenteeism. Actually, we had, every meeting had a quorum that we had. And in my experience on the board since '97, we've actually had very good turnout, especially on important issues. So I think the issues really, you had a few offenders, if you want to call it that, were some people who were coming in at, lower than what would be acceptable. And certainly that's something I agree with you is worth that should be addressed. I think that the one thing that I think our board members, what we'll sort of come back to you with is the ideas about measuring the, how you assess a community board member, right? Because you have attendance is one thing you look at how they contribute to that board. And so, for example, if I have a member who is coming to 70% of the meetings, but is a co-chair and is writing the minutes and is very productive and thoughtful in the way they interact with board members, and I have a member who comes to 100% of the meetings, but can be a little bit divisive, right? I'd rather have the 70% member, quite honestly, because that's a much better type of a member to have. So that's the type of the nuances and things like that is the stuff that, and we can talk about that. That's fine.
Okay.
But anyway, that's just my general. So just a question in terms of what kind of feedback do you want, from our board? Do you want us to come back to you with anything in terms of, reviewing this, or how would you like us to come back to you on that?
Constructive criticism
Sure.
and specific objective criteria is the direction we'd like to head in. Regardless of whether it's our borough or one of the other four, anytime there's changes, there's always articles that come out, and the idea is to come up with objective criteria that take away some of the discretion and make it more objective, so that when people want to hurl false accusations one way or the other, that at least we know that there was a fair process and it isn't just politics, that the goal is to try to depoliticize. So before you criticize, just make sure you have a better solution. That's kind of something my mother raised me on.
Sure. Okay.
Christine and then Matthew.
Yeah, when you talk about diversity, I think it would be interesting to include housing diversity
That's in there.
and transportation diversity.
Both of those are in
Okay.
the current
Right,
Manhattan
very good.
application lists, the different types, rental, co-op, NYCHA. The borough president indicated a strong push to try to recruit more NYCHA residents. And so there's
And
that.
transportation is in there?
Yes, transportation is one of the
And so,
items requested.
one of the things also in our board, we have a difficult time to retain women
Mhm.
as part of. So this year we lost 3, but we didn't gain 1, and so we need to. I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on that, but it's really difficult to retain women and to especially mother of children. For whatever reason, so we are very interested in school, but we can't get mothers of children involved just for whatever it's the timing or whatever. It's difficult, so we need to find a way to do that. And I'm just posing the problem without the solution. I don't have the solution there. So
A solution that was proposed by the Scott Stringer, the controller, former
Right.
borough president, and not sure if it will be continued as targeted outreach plans by community board, and working with each community board chair to help them develop organizing and outreach plans to target specific populations.
it's more about retaining. I don't know. This is
Yep.
the timing anyway. And the final point is about the term limit. I think on one hand we say we need more experts, and the experts are people we develop over time in land use, for example. So we have great experts, and they have been there a long time. We don't want to lose them. So I think
You're not gonna lose them.
right. And one way would say that they cannot remain chair of their committee for a long time, but they should remain members, and that would be a way of dealing with that.
Matthew recognized.
Sure. A couple things. There's some things that I just disagree with. Completely like the term limits, especially if we're talking about getting younger members on. If someone joins at 16 and at 26 they're told they have to get off. I was elected chair of my board at 26, so I think there's still a lot of value that someone can add in that. And there are other things. I have a lot of comments about it. I think in terms of the 30 days to appoint a member to a vacancy, there has to be some additional language in there. And I bring up a specific example. This past December, almost on Christmas Day, we had a member who was appointed to our board for a term that was ending March 31st. It doesn't really make sense to put that person in that position, and then 2 weeks after they're appointed, they have to reapply for membership. And so I think there has to be a time frame or an amount of time left in the term for it to make sense to appoint that person. And so I think that's something to work on in terms of language. And then some of the other comments as well. But what is the best way to give my comments to you and your office so that can be incorporated?
You can email it to policy@benkalos.com, and just please know that most of the stuff is public information. In fact, everything's spoilable, so just understand that if it's your feedback, please make sure to provide it as you as an individual. If it is the board's feedback, just make sure that it's...
I'm happy to give my feedback.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Keels, thank you just have one question, is you're focusing right now on the community board composition of the makeup, but you can't look at it in isolation without looking at the staff in the office as well. So I just wanted to find out, if you're going to be looking at that as well.
So I think what came out of it was that one of the best practices would be for there to be an urban planner on every single community board. As part of the city council response on the budget, I have included that request. This year you were all baseline, so I don't think anyone actually showed up from the community board asking for money, but because I had already gotten the previous testimony, I'm focused on urban planners. That being said, if you have any other ideas for staffing, I'm more focused on citywide, and Gail is your borough president, so I'm just happy to work with whomever.
And people should, make comments. He can take. He's a big guy. He can take them, and he needs to, because you're the ones who are the experts. So, and then you should send us a copy. You should, if you want, send also your own council member a copy. Because there's issues here. I don't agree with some of these issues either, and we'll tell him. But he's making the effort.
And I appreciate
I'll tell him.
the Manhattan Borough President for giving us so much time to discuss and allowing me to be here, even though we don't agree on everything.
So just really quickly on the topic of attendance, I think Nick hit a really big bone of contention on our board, which is that I think attendance is, we're overly focused on signing in for meetings and making sure you're there. And then once you're there, some people contribute and some people don't. And so the point about the 100% attendance, one of the things we've thought about is, what about somebody who maybe only attends 70% of the meetings but is working on a project and there's a deliverable at the end of the year on a certain committee? I mean, I think most people on our board recognize that the full board meetings, having a quorum and being there is really important, but I don't know if that's ever been considered or something that you would want to consider about having, there are innumerable projects in our neighborhood that people spend hours and hours working on, and some of them physically can't be at a meeting at the northern part of the district if they work in Midtown at 6:30 at night. So we're trying to figure out if there might be a way that we could, their involvement is no less great just because they may not be able to be at every single committee meeting. And that's something that I think we would really like to explore with you and with
I would just love to get objective criteria on which we can evaluate people, and maybe it's an on-the-record position from the chair or from the body, or I don't know how you want to do it, but it seems like there is skin in the game for chairs, and you want to roll on the selection process, so it may just need to be something where perhaps something that we come to as a borough board is that the chairs will provide an on-the-record recommendation, pro, con, or whatever, and understanding that you can't just recommend every single member of your board, because there still has to, everyone can't get an A.
Well, it could be, maybe it could be similar to what I think Carmen is trying to do now in DOE, as opposed to just, testing. The question might be to have other criteria. That could still be, it doesn't have to be, I think it's true, you have to be careful. You don't want to put a negative on a piece of paper necessarily about somebody, but it could be that you could add to it, they've worked on a project in addition. There could be other things that were part of the objective, because I don't think a chair is going to say so-and-so is not performing, because they don't want to be on record. There may be other issues involved. But the chair could say this person is also working on a project, or this person had X attendance, I don't see a project, something like that. There are we can come up with some ideas if you want. We didn't use in our office, just so you know, we did not use just attendance.
What I can just share with you is, I have members on my board where 40 people came to me and begged me to take them off the board, and I said fine, I need it in writing, and I got zero people willing to put in writing that they at a situation where, if you've been reading any of the blog coverage, I have somebody who donated to my campaign, supported me on my campaign, who I did not reappoint, who is accusing me of political retribution, where it's just I've appointed people who didn't support me and I've made recommendations to the borough president. So in a world where the media will literally write anything, I'm just looking for objective criteria and making sure that the borough presidents and the council members have a reform
Sometimes
process.
a little bit science and art, though.
Right, I agree.
Science and art.
have Vicky recognize next, George, and then Henrietta. But speaking about the nuances of attendance and technical glitches, I think our sign-in sheet has gotten stuck somewhere in the middle. Please make sure to circulate the sign-in sheet.
Yeah, I signed it this time.
Just a matter that I wanted to highlight was in the selection, I'm not sure if it goes to Borough President Brewer or Councilman Carlson. In regards to, we get members who wear multiple hats before coming to the board. And a lot of the issues with attendance is that they have to attend all these other meetings. And the community board meeting is not the priority meeting on occasions when it comes to specific functions and or events that go on within the community. And roughly speaking, a lot of them are like political events, you know, that go on and things like that. And I think I kind of would like to see, and I'm going to send you some language that indicates that the community board that's the priority for attendance. And if you're attending of the meetings and you can't attend your committee meetings or general meetings as you are duly supposed to, then that's a discussion that should be had. And people should be able to, should I say, that should be recognized in the beginning. If someone comes with one hat, that's cool. Now they're part of 2 and 3 things. And I see that on Community Board 12, we have many members that are part of different groups, not just advocacy groups, political groups, groups of interest, whatever you wish to call them, and it gets in the way of participating in the board.
This shouldn't be a problem.
And I think that's something to, while they are great with experience and talent, that should be taken into consideration when it comes to thinking about attendance. You know, you leave it to them to decide where they want to go.
Okay.
Vicky?
Just a couple of comments. Like Matthew, we are going to be addressing a lot of the things that he's referred to that we were just doing. But just some helpful things, I think, regarding Christine's issue with attendance for actual membership, where you have to be on, I mean, we all know this, but I want to say it out loud, where you have to be on 2 committees and you have to give up your time. When we find, at least when I find, that someone feels that they'd love to be on the community board, but they can't put in that kind of time, we really have to exercise our right as chairs to put them on as public members. And many people don't even know that. And, you know, I'll say to them, well, you can be on the board if you're interested in one issue and one issue only, because they say, I really don't care about those other issues. Well, fine, I'll put you on as a public member, and they devote themselves solely to that issue, which is really much better for the board because they're not off doing, you know, trying to be a part of something that they're not interested in. And on the issue of attendance, what I've started to do is to enter, and I'm going to start now sending copies to the Borough President's office, but I've entered into the file that kind of information about someone who perhaps, we have someone on our board who has to go out of town, not often, but when it does happen, he's going to miss maybe 2 full board meetings. But this person is so involved on a regular basis. He's a co-chair. He sits down every week with the chair of that committee. He works diligently, and so our bylaws say this, and I'm not sure if that's true of every community board, but our bylaws say that the chair has the right to either give someone a special assignment that could take the place of a committee. For instance, even though it didn't happen with Lola, she chaired that task force that took up a humongous amount of time, and I excused her from being on one of our committees because she simply, it was just too much. Exactly. So what I started doing, because I thought, well, you know, if I'm not here tomorrow, who's going to know that this is happening? So I started putting memos into the file. But I think I should send it also to her President's office for future reference when we're looking at attendance. That's a good idea.
I have Henrietta, and then we'll have the last comment from
Community Board 10 is all of the above here. One of the things that we have done, leave of absence, that's something we need to think about. I don't know when it started with Community Board 10, but we have a lot of leave of absence, and it can go 3 months, 6 months, and it does affect quorums, you know, but the leave of absence, so that's something we can look at that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also, I mean, we have had like the task force and several other ways that members have been extremely active. And I think that we would need to have a very comprehensive approach to their involvement as opposed to just committee meetings. Actually, I think in our case, it really was probably that they were very active both in committee meetings and in things like the task force. But I can see it easy for those of us who have day jobs to actually have trouble committing to multiple things like that at once and still being very active and contributing positively to the community board. The only other thing I wanted to really get a better understanding of would be the not just the attendance, but the term limits, I guess, and the limitations. I think we haven't actually discussed this in committee yet in CB6, but we have been concerned because I think a good portion of my board is active, with other CBOs and political organizations, not necessarily, party leadership, which I think the term that was used, and I wasn't really sure what that meant. So I know that was a big concern since we have many people who are very active in our communities as well as the Republican and Democratic Party locally.
Sure. So if you're involved in a community group, that's fine. I think to just echo one of your colleagues, community board comes first versus if you have a choice between that. You're involved in your political club, president of the political club, fine. When you're the chair or on the executive board of the Democratic County Committee for the New York County or Republican County Committee for New York County or the New York State Democratic Committee, and I think even state committee members aren't actually on that executive committee either. So you're literally just looking at that and it's following a strict prescription from James Otto, and before that Molinari, who was the borough president out in Staten Island. But we can broaden it, we can narrow it. It's just something that came out of the testimony. Just two things I want to point out is just to echo the call for public members, and I feel that a full board member gets to go to full board meetings and vote. Some of you have split full board into full board and land use, but the point is you get to go to 12 meetings and vote. And if there is another project that is more important where a person feels that they need to be excused from their duty of voting at a full board meeting, then perhaps that's an opportunity to say, why don't you take 2 years to focus on this as a public member and then come back with our full recommendation and whatnot, and know that you will always be able to work on that. One other piece.
And we gotta move it.
Yes, very quickly. According to the charter, you have all of you are empowered to remove members from your boards for just cause after 6 months. So if you have somebody who's not showing up for 6 months, one of the new appointments who just isn't cutting it, 6 months, cut them off, create a vacancy, and fill your ranks. And that way you can also, the onus will be on us less because there'll be more vacancies to fill.
Can I clarify that right now? It's really important. The former borough president did not want us to do that. It was very clear that we should not do that we had to first check with his staff.
I mean, I think we would like to be checked with, but sometimes it's good to have other people, maybe there's some reason for it, you don't know. I mean, that's what I was suggesting. This is you can do it, but I think it's good to check.
Okay.
Thank you for so much time.
Thank you, Councilman Pedros, for your report and the focus on community board members.
Thank you.
Next, we'll turn to the community board chair reports. We'll start with community board chair 1.
Great. Thank you very much. It's good to be brought up the same month again. First of all, thank you very much. We love our 4 new members. They seem very enthusiastic. And we already assigned buddies. So if you hold a member, like a new member. We also had our new member orientation last night after the executive committee. So that was very helpful. We posted our senior report online. We did a breakdown. Community board 1, I also sent a letter to the director of the New York City Office of Management and Budget, reiterating that the number 1 capital request in Community Board 1 budget priority for fiscal 2015 is the school seats, because there was declines. I mean, there was 465 versus 1,000 school seats. As you well know, since you've been to every single one, tonight is meeting number 8 of the Seaport Working Group. And that will eventually be coming here before the rest of the chairs. New York Rising, as co-chair of that committee, is submitted, which involved community boards 1, 2, and 3 representation. That report was submitted on March 29th, and we also applied to 6 of the top choices that you could apply to for rising to the top. So we're hoping we'll be able to win one of those 6 categories. I wanted to thank everyone for the input because communities 2 and 3 were very involved. I also want to thank you for your input in your budget priorities report, including open space and parks and resiliency, and also the addition of landmark. That was very nice. And then one question that I was speaking with earlier with Kate Spalding was, before your time, there's something called, we had an issue with the Civic Center sale, with the sale of 346 Broadway, and different parts went to different areas. And one of them was into 66 John Street. So there was a local lawsuit. And just 2 days ago, Justice Huff had finally ruled that about the Article 78 petition. She denied the request for relief. The sole basis was the 4-month statute of limitations, finding the April 2013 notice in the city record. So I don't know how many of the other people here, the chairs, know what the city record is.
They know.
It's this dense document, and buried in there was the announcement in April, and no one saw it or knew about it.
It's very common.
We were not notified about that, so therefore the community board could not respond. So we have a problem with this, that it could bury future transactions in the city record.
I think Martha's been working on legislation on that, right? You have to have places besides the city record be notified.
Yeah, actually, I mean,
you have a bill on that.
We actually.
Oh, you do?
Well, so it hasn't been introduced yet. We passed legislation last term specifically regarding city rules changes, and we're actually, I guess it hasn't been introduced yet, but we're actually working with Councilmember Grabnick now on new legislation that would relate to other things in the city record. But it hasn't been introduced, so I can't really specify like what's in it. But
I know you're on it.
It was specifically based on, at least for our part, it was specifically based on this notice.
Great. Well, keep us posted on that because I think we just found out about it. We're co-sponsoring with all our elected officials a Rat Academy tonight. We're very excited about that. And as you all know, it's exciting news that the fireworks has been moved to the East River as well.
Everybody's happy about Board 7.
Exactly.
And Board 4.
Board 4. And my last 2 announcements are we're co-sponsoring with Community Boards 2 and 3 liquor license, SLA forum on Tuesday, May 6th. So we're looking forward to that. And anyone who's a 9/11 member, resident or survivor or worker, there are free memorial passes available in the preview week. So we just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, hi, Laura Cabono. I'm the first vice chair. I don't want to take too much time, but before the borough president got into the room, we had a long discussion about the role of the EDC, which I'm sure will be discussed with the president later.
Yeah, we know well.
And I'm sure you do. And I just wanted to reiterate that in CB2 we have a big project plan for 19 East Houston. And, this is a classic example of a failure of public policy. Absolutely is. You have the city owning a site that is in a very highly trafficked, extremely dense neighborhood on the corner of Houston and Broadway, where you literally can't sometimes walk on the sidewalk. Literally. And the EDC is pushing a project, working with a developer. I question their, I think they do a lot of good things, but I don't think this is appropriate for them to be doing this, number one. Number two, it's a question of, the MTA, it's easy to make the argument that the MTA gets the money, then they'll serve more people. Of course, we're all familiar with that argument. However, you can't kill a community. I'm not saying I don't want to be too dramatic. But you have to be very careful about the impacts of these things, and not just go to the bottom line. And an issue in the RFP, very quickly, I'll just tell you that in the original RFP, this is a former parking lot for the MTA. But in it, there was a major ventilation grate for the subway system. And there was just a big subway upgrade. at that station, the Broadway Lafayette station. There's a large vent plant, right in the street, in the surface, off the street. In the original RFP, they said that the developer has to accommodate that somehow, but they can't move it because of the various needs of the subway system. Somehow that got that after the RFP was awarded, that changed, and now the developer wants to put the grate completely on the sidewalk. And many people, I think you'll agree with me, routinely don't walk on sidewalk grades. There are many reasons, I don't have to go into it now, but many people don't do that.
We're New Yorkers, we know not to.
Right. So they're creating a situation where a very narrow sidewalk that is extremely densely populated all the time will be almost disappearing because the developer is going to be allowed to put if this project goes through, the vent on the sidewalk. So this is something, and believe me, there are a lot of ways which I'm hoping it's a ULURP, and the borough president has a lot to say about that. We're really
appreciate you bringing it up.
And then one other thing I just wanted to mention, I want to support the borough president on her comments that I've read recently in Cranes and about the need to protect older buildings, and we're all in favor of affordable housing, and Manhattan does have a particular problem for a lot of reasons, especially downtown Manhattan, but affordable housing can't be a reason that developers get bonuses. I mean, there has to be a very nuanced approach to this. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 3.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Leon, Second Vice Chair. As mentioned at the last month's Borough Board report, that there's a family shelter on Catherine Street that is transferring over to a adult shelter, and there has been a absolute public outrage because there was absolutely no notification to the community, and especially to the residents that are living at Smith Houses, which is right next to the center. So we hosted a meeting at our Human Services Committee with inviting DHS to our meeting and help facilitate communication with one another. And DHS has promised to come to the next tenant association at Smith Houses and take all questions from concerning residents, not just from Smith Houses, but the neighboring area. And we are glad to see that the children are out of that facility because it's inadequate, and hopefully that they would be transitioned to a better, adequate facility.
Do you have a date for the Smith Houses meeting?
No, I don't. At CB3, we are trying to streamline the SLA approval process, hoping that it will be more efficient and shortening the meetings, as April's meeting ended at 2 a.m. As mentioned by a colleague from CB1, that we are having a joint meeting with CB1 and CB2, and hopefully that this meeting would provide better informed committee decisions and also effective resolution writing. As mentioned at previous borough board meetings, that we are trying to finalize our white paper project, which is to get a school built at the Super Urban Renewal Area, or the new name is Essex Street Crossing. And we also beginning the process of designing a public park that is within our guidelines for that the Super Urban Renewal Area project.
Thank you. Community Board 4.
Yes, thank you. We approved a large building, very large building on 57th Street. However, there is still an outstanding issue with calculation of school seats, and it seems that Council Member Rosenthal is very concerned about the number of school seats that need to be built in this area, which is the south of CB7 and the north of CB4, and the way the school seats are allocated. And I don't know what is the effort there, but we really need some help on that, because it's clear that the parents said the schools are completely at max. Meanwhile, the developers come and say, oh no, there is no problem. So there is a disconnect there, and we need some help on that. We learned last year there was a revision to the zoning of Hudson Yard in which some 20,000 square feet of park, of open space was taken back by the city. And in exchange for that, the Community Board 4 negotiated to get 20,000 of park in another space, which is called the Hudson Boulevard. And we just learned that unilaterally the city has stopped that the design of that park and said that it was on hold and there was no more money for that. And we're really outraged because it was negotiated as part of rezoning, and the city got and the developer got their 20,000 feet, and now we don't have the money to do the park. So hopefully this administration is going to be more friendly to communities and make sure that deals which have been done don't take reneged on so fast after the case. So that's very, very high on our priority. We are objecting to the Port Authority budget, which doesn't, capital budget, which doesn't include a bus garage. As you know, we are inundated with buses, 8,000 a day, and they are still, everybody's still talking about giving money to World Trade Center and Larry Silverstein, but not money to a bus garage. And I think we are elected and everyone should be really reacting to that and say, where is the public money going and why not for the benefit of the public? Finally, enforcement. Enforcement, we have had a lot of success with NYPD, connecting with them one-on-one, telling them what we want, and they come back and they report, and it's very encouraging. On the other hand, DOB is just hopeless. I don't know how anyone does business with DOB, but asking them, we gave them a whole list of violations, very specific. We asked them to go, and they came back and they say, no, there is no violation. And we said, well, we have the picture, we have the code, there is a violation. So they send people out, and they come back and they say, no, there is no violation. I mean, this is bordering, it's bordering illegal, and these people should be audited and supervised and put in jail. I mean, this is what is about. So we are using our tax money to, pay those people.
Christine, we have a good relationship with. Let's talk after.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. So let's do it.
And the final piece is last year or 2 years ago we did with Scott Stringer and you, Gail, a lot of work on phone booths.
Yeah.
This year is the renewal of the contract. We have not heard anything from them, and we have no access.
I haven't heard anything.
And it would be really a good time to say what's going on here.
I think they're probably waiting for a do-it commissioner who has not been appointed.
Right.
But we can talk.
But the deadline is the end of this year, whether there is a commissioner or not.
Right. Well, there will be one by then. But let's talk about it. It's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 5?
Yes, I'll try and be, excuse me, as brief as possible. So we have 4 issues that really are important that are all connected, and that is East Midtown, Central Park, Rizzoli's, and the Historic District Council. And the reason they're all connected is because we are pushing this year for, we have to address East Midtown again. We know that, or at least it's been said, that the new administration is going to be looking at it and, as they say, coming to some conclusion by the end of the year. So I hope we're not up against the gun again in terms of let's get it done fast and easy and quick and messy. So that's what we're concerned about. Central Park, as you all know, we have a task force called the Sunshine Task Force. It's connected because it still has to do with the same type of development, only in this case it's worse because it's, as of right, excuse me, all along 57th, 58th, and 59th Street. So we now have these mega buildings going up that are not only impacting on our infrastructure, pedestrian, vehicular, subways, but the sexier issue, the shadows on the park, and we've gotten, as you all know, a lot of feedback on that, but that's all connected again to what happened with Rizzoli's and what ultimately is going to happen to that spot. And as we also all know, Gail did a rally 2 weeks ago, and we did one on the last day, last Friday. Even though we knew it was a done deal, it's important that we get out, that we get in the media, that we make people understand that this is outrageous. And, I haven't been in that store for a decade, and I'm sorry I went in. because I was next to tears.
And I was too.
It's
I've been
really
watching that
upsetting.
since I was a kid.
So, and then finally, which is still connected, and Catherine reminded me of this, I don't know why it went out of my head, that the, yes, that the Historic District Council will be giving an award to the multi-board task force in June. So it's boards 1, 4, 5, and 6.
Congratulations.
And I think that's pretty wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Community Board 6.
So, actually we were dancing around the idea of doing a 197A plan for our portion of the East Midtown rezoning kind of district between 40th and 59th, west of between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. So that's something we might actually try to figure out if that even makes sense, given the new timeline with the East Midtown rezoning. But what I really wanted to talk about was last month, unfortunately, we had again an instance where the SLA renewed an application for a very problematic establishment that has had numerous building violations. It's a residentially zoned place that's being used for commercial purposes, has no public assembly permit, has lots of issues with it, and unfortunately we invite them to come and discuss with the community board. They don't, but their license continuously gets renewed. So I think that's something we really do need to focus on as a group and try to figure out a better way. I know that there's some legislation that has been proposed, but I think it's something that's very problematic with the way that the SLA is licensing establishments. I just wanted to also mention, I think I mentioned last time, that we've been using the mapping for the 311 and the noise complaints. We're expanding that now to address our budget priorities as well as traffic accidents, because it's something that we've seen statistically, but we haven't really been able to see it laid out on a map and kind of in a helpful manner. So I think we're going to be using that so we can closely align our priorities with DOT and some of the other agencies to actually better address the issues. And also just wanted to mention we are doing also...
Hold on a second.
Yep.
Are those maps available during a committee hearing on a topic, or they're still on your PC?
That's my hope, yes.
They're
So
still on your PC.
what I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to get all the committees to meet in rooms that have internet access, maybe a large TV or a projection screen, so that they can review them in real time. That was often the case in the past where people would say, oh, well, I think it's over there, I recall it's over there, I can't pull up the DOE record until after the meeting, so it really wasn't helpful to the committee. So we're trying to kind of bring that a little bit closer so they can actually look up information.
Wait, you're going to have a computer hooked up in real time so you can actually look at the violations in the meeting?
We're trying to
So
do
you-
that.
oh, 'cause
Yes, it's
we
hard for us to
don't
always
have
find.
Wi-Fi
Yeah, it's always hard to find venues.
I know what you got.
Yeah. So I mean that's one of the problems we've been running into. Even for our full board meetings, when we do recording of the video, when we go to venues that don't have internet access, we can't stream. There's all sorts of difficulties.
We're going to work on all these issues with everybody, but
we are also doing a RAD Academy and some quality of life forums over the summer and probably into the fall. So I have to mention that. And the last thing, I wanted to invite the borough president or perhaps a deputy borough president to join us. In a couple of weeks, we're actually going to be touring the police academy that we, since 2008, I think I've mentioned, has been. We've been trying to turn it into a school, and so we wanted to survey the space and tour it and actually get an idea of how feasible that might be. So I'll pass along the details to your office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Community Board 7?
Great. So first we want to thank Borough President Brewer and Controller Stringer related to the 95th Street shelter and the work that you did with Freedom House. There was an agreement reached, I guess, over the weekend or on Monday between the Deputy Mayor for HHS and DHS and about reducing the size of Freedom House by 1/2, which we think will produce a much better environment for shelter clients, tenants, and the overall community. So we're very happy with that. And my understanding is the next step is that there will be a revised contract that's being worked on in the Controller's office. So thank you for that. We held our 5th annual B2B, which was focused on youth employment. We brought together local businesses with a number of school guidance counselors and other employees of the public schools in the neighborhood. Councilman Matthew Eugene spoke, and Councilmember Rosenthal was there. We had almost 100 people, thanks to Jessica for being there for that, which was great, and we encourage, I know a number of, George and Michelle have been working with a number of other boards on the B2B program. It's been very successful. We, as I mentioned, given the spate of pedestrian fatalities earlier this year, we've convened a pedestrian safety and design task force that has already met twice. They've identified the corridors of 59th and 70th Street and 97th and 100th Street as the corridors. The first public meeting is going to be held in early May. Along the lines of the concept of affordable housing, I loved, Gail, your mentioning the Manhattan way of affordable housing. I think you just identified the actual subject for what we're going to do. We have a land use committee that is very, when they're busy, they're very busy, but when they're not busy, they don't meet. And so we thought a good idea would be to actually have them work with our housing committee to produce sort of a workshop and a discussion that will be involving talking to the Borough President's office about sort of the concept of affordable housing, and it's going to be a meeting similar in scope to what Vicki and Community Board 5 did on the super skyscraper issue, and we hope to be doing that either at the end of June or in September. So we're very excited about that. Just a few things coming up in May: the Jewish Home and Life Care proposed development site and the revised EIS is going to be discussed on May 7th and May 8th. So that'll be obviously something that we'll have a lot of feedback about. We want to thank the Borough President's Office for all of their work in selecting our 9 new members to the board, and we think they bring a lot of diversity and great stuff to the board, so we're excited about that. One general thing for all the community boards that I wanted to bring up, especially with the new members who are coming on to various boards, we've had a lot of questions about sort of the use of personal email and when somebody is brought onto the board knowing that sort of effectively, since they haven't been issued a government email, that their personal email is subject to review if there's a FOIA request, if there's something that comes up. And it's just brought up a lot of interesting conversations. I'd be curious to talk to any of you folks offline about how that works.
We need to get that clarified with some of the attorneys, and we will.
Yeah, it's just something that I think for the new members, and also everything from that to sort of the use of social media. We have a CB7 Twitter account, but individuals have individual Twitter accounts, and sometimes our members don't like their individual Twitter accounts being sent out to reporters or other things, and it's brought up a lot of issues related to sort of communications and privacy that I thought you guys might want to, which is great. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
Okay, we'll be quick. We met on Roosevelt Island. It's always good to be there. We got an update from Cornell Technion on what they're doing, and also a good look at the overall plan, what they're doing. We got good news from them in terms of removal from the construction sort of stuff that they have to take off the island. 100% of it right now is being removed by barge, which is very good news. That's what we asked for when we held the task force meetings, and the community, the residents certainly are pleased about that. We'll be having a vendor forum in May to talk about, to bring in different groups to talk about what our recommendations are about vendors. We're not looking to change the world here and eliminate vendors or anything like that. We're trying to just come up with some constructive approaches to it, which we've already outlined, which are simple solutions such as a separate vendor task force to enforce the rules on street vendors, perhaps similar types of standard issue furniture or whatever they can use that can be readily identified. Simple things like that, just to make it easier. We are getting a lot of complaints, by the way, from sort of food and deli stores on 2nd Avenue where they're already impacted by the 2nd Avenue subway, and then a street food vendor moves outside their store. So they feel that's kind of like a double whack, putting salt on the wound. So we're a bit sympathetic to that problem, but it's tricky with the different regulations that apply there. And finally, we'll be hearing in May at our Seniors and Social Services Committee. There's going to be a drug rehab facility that's going to be asking to move on East 79th Street, which is, I'm sure we're going to get a fair amount of community reaction on that. So
who's running it?
I think it's a group called Dunes. They have something out on the island. I looked up on their website. Yeah, I don't know a lot about them. I just looked on their website. Anyway, I think it's going to be a fairly significant issue, certainly for the folks on 79th
Nick,
Street.
where on 79th Street?
I think the address is 400 East 79th Street. And that's calendared for our committee in May. I'll check the date on that for you.
Thank you. Community Board 9? Community Board 10?
I just want to go back. Thank you so much. This is a great meeting. I was also downtown this morning, looking at the building, and something hit me. Jumped back on the No, it's okay. I was getting ready to get my coffee. So I missed the resolution, the voting resolution, so I'd like to go on record and say CB10 supports that. We were concerned about how it affects schools construction. I did speak to Dario yesterday at the office and said that was a concern of several boards, so I assume that's going to be taken care of. April grant of housing, NYCHA housing, 114th Street, NYCHA's beginning to work on that property. It's actually a low rise, one of the few low rises in New York, in Central Harlem, housing, and they're going to do mixed now. It's going to be affordable housing and NYCHA housing, so it's going to be interesting how they do that, but they're starting that. Of course, the economic impact is going to be jobs for the community, training, so hopefully we will follow with NYCHA and make sure that happens.
The guy who's doing it is very normal.
He's very normal?
He's fantastic.
Oh, okay, great.
No, good. I mean, like.
Could you put him on the board?
Well, no.
We need one like that.
But I'm just saying, he seems like a good developer.
Good, very good to know. Just a few things. Based on the tax lien that we received, which is the first time we received it, which is really good to know, we have linked up with West Harlem Group and Councilwoman Inez Dickens, and there's going to be a meeting on the 23rd for all the individuals who hopefully people will come out so that they can be helped with the various city agencies and private agencies, and so they won't lose their property. So it's the first time we're involved with this, so we're kind of not excited, but it's good to know we're helping the community. ONIC organization. ONIC organization is Lennox Terrace, and many of you may know that development up in Harlem. Actually, I live there. Many years ago, they got some urban money, federal money, to create an environment where there were trees and open spaces, and out of that came Lennox Terrace. And the same thing with Park West Village. They got the same kind of money. What has happened, I think it went for 50 years, and now that is all over, so the owners can now do what they want under the law. So with Lennox Terrace, there's this big fight because they want to put up new buildings, new stores, and the property is, I think, about a good square 4 blocks. So there's a lot of going back and forth with the tenants association and ONIC in terms of what they can do and what they cannot do. So that's going to be a big concern in the community when that comes before the board. I know the tenants are coming tonight. Well, LTAC is coming tonight to voice their concern. ONIC has not come to basically put this on the table. So that's one of the things we're dealing with. I just learned this week that the Greater Harlem Nursing Home is basically, they sent out an RFP. I didn't see the RFP, but they're planning on selling the Greater Harlem Nursing Home. And, I'm just looking at all the development that takes place in the community that give a 5 or 10 years. It's probably not
Let
going to be
me just say, this is a huge issue. We've got the Salvation Army on Williams residence on 95th Street. I can go on and on. We need to have a separate discussion because we could end up with literally every single nonprofit in Manhattan selling and either taking the money and using it for purposes. But we need to keep these organizations that are well run, in my opinion, in our neighborhoods, the well-run ones. And we will, if they're going to sell them, maybe they could sell them to another nonprofit or something. We got to work this huge. I can tell you, just like looking at the dollars.
That's what that's
so we got it.
Great, thank you so much. We have lost our 2 police captains on 28th and the 32nd, but they've gone on to bigger and better things. And I'm so proud to say there is a female, I wouldn't say inspector, coming to the 28th. She's there. So it's really good, and she's an African descent, which is really good, especially for that community. So we're really happy, heading the precincts. And then we also have a new person coming to the 32nd. But our 2 outgoing inspectors, they were excellent, and we're really, we congratulate them tonight in terms of where they're going to in the police department. So that's really good. McComb's Library, we've heard this so many times, and we've been just investigating and figuring why can't we get bigger library. But I did have a conversation with Councilman Levine last week, and I spoke to Inez Dickens. We're going to sit down and see what we can do, look at what is needed, how can we get bigger space, you know, so that we can have a library that basically can accommodate that community. And with that, we did have an education forum. There was a debriefing last night, I think, you know, the pros and cons of that forum. It was just very interesting. It was a new chair of the education committee. So we're going to go back and forth on what we need to have and what we don't need to have at forums, so that because we're the voice, meaning we can make sure everyone's hearing the right message. So I think that's it for me right now. There are a lot of things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Community Board 11?
Sure, a couple things. Just an update on the explosion. Community Board 11, along with our president and others, hosted a fundraiser on the 31st of March. We raised just under $20,000 that night for the really good. I want to thank everyone for their support. I know certainly in thoughts or calls or emails, you all were there. I want to thank Liz especially for coming out that evening to join us, and certainly our president and Aldrin and Joe and Jessica and Kate and Jesus, who were all hanging out. And so I thought that our president's office was uptown towards that. It's been 36 days since it happened. There were 78 apartments that were vacated. Today there are only 5 left that are still vacated. So we're making progress. A lot of work within the buildings. We're replacing floors. People are working with Safe Horizons to get furniture that was damaged. And so really it's been an incredible effort to come together and to try to help provide some normalcy for these families who are severely displaced. So it's been a work in progress, something that certainly impacted the community, but we as a community, but we as a larger community have come together. So I thank everyone for the ongoing support. Also, a couple of other things. One, some of you who took the 456 trains may have noticed there are a lot of people hanging out on Lexington Avenue, 125th Street. It's been an ongoing problem for many years. The Department of Homeless Services has a shelter on Ward's Island, and there are buses, shuttle buses that drop people off on that corner, or they take the M35 bus, and there's nothing for them to do. And so they hang out all day until they can go back when the shelter opens. I don't know if others are having issues with DHS, but there really needs to be a better plan to provide services for these people and not just dumping them on the street corner. And so it's a real issue. I'm sure others are having issues. And we have a lot of mental clinics. And so it's a real challenge. It's been a real challenge. And so I'd love to find out how others are dealing with it, or if we just need to come together and
You're
try to
the
figure
only
out a
one
plan.
with the problem.
So maybe we'll organize something. And then earlier we were talking about EDC and some of the issues there. I've been talking with the Borough President's Land Use Division. There's been discussion about how we sort of rethink about ULURP and how we're impacting ULURP and prior to ULURP. One of the things that I talked with the Land Use Division about, and I think something we can all agree, and which came up a little bit earlier, is how we impact the formation of RFPs. And I think that's where we really need to have the most impact. We need to craft those. I don't think they're going to statement of district needs. I don't think they're looking at any 197A plans that exist. And so how do we shape what the RFP is? Because that's how we get the most for the communities. I think we really need to do full court press in making that happen. So that's what I've done.
Thank you. Community Board 12?
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to thank the Borough President's Office for concluding the selection for our reappointments, as well as our new board members. We thank you for the 9 board members we received. With that said, we're planning our new board member orientation hopefully in May. We want to give you some time to float around some other committees before we appoint them. We've completed our statement of the mayor's preliminary budget response for fiscal year 2015 that's submitted. The Public Safety Committee, CB12, is holding another shredding event to combat identity theft in the 4th, the 33rd Precinct, 33rd, 34th, the District Attorney's Office, as well as the New York Presbyterian Hospital. And the vendor is called CTAS. They come out and they contribute 4 or 5 hours to the community. So if any of the community districts, they do it. So if you need it done for your community, they give up like 4 or 5 hours to the community to do shredding events. Also, I've been contacted by the commissioner Forgione through an email here to Matthew in regards to a joint meeting for DOT to discuss some traffic issues amongst 155th Street and St. Nicholas and Edgecombe and Holland River. Sorry, 1110. Yeah. So we're going to be meeting to discuss that. Our Traffic and Transportation Committee to weigh in on that. Our Housing Committee is holding a legal tenant forum May 27th from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Our guest speaker at our general meeting coming up shall be the Commissioner for the Mayor's Domestic Violence, former Deputy Rose. Yeah, Rose. Also, in the process of appointing chairs and assistant chairs, I discovered that I don't have all the time to really mentor, and we do link up people to mentor and all that. But sometimes chairmans of new committees and assistant chairs need a little more one-on-one guidance in regards to their roles and responsibilities in that capacity. So the Executive Committee of CB12 has discussed putting together a handbook, best practices, roles, and responsibilities for appointed chairs to committees and assistant chairs. In regards
You'll
to
share that
CB4 is doing that right now. We're going to have it ready by next month.
Oh, good.
So
we're ready.
you can.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
You can take it and run with it.
I'm happy to announce bike lanes are supposed to be coming out of town. So we had a proposal before our Traffic and Transportation Committee. It's somewhere in the 150s around there. We're going to be presenting bike lanes. We did some amendments to our bylaws around communication. We've discovered in the past there's a piece in there that informs us in regards to the chair of the board with outgoing mail, that all letters that are sent out to the city agencies and or from committee chairs are to be co-signed by the chair of the board. We're in a new technology era. It's emails, and you brought up this point. We amended our bylaws to indicate all personnel in the board, especially chairs of committees that are in communication with city agencies and or, let's say, events, projects, or issues that are going on, they need to CC the board, the chairperson of the board, in regards to what they're doing with a particular organization and or group and or city agency, so that the chairperson is informed and knows what's going on there. And another thing is we're moving to enhance on our attendance. Another item that we're looking at our bylaws, there's clarification of when board members, as per the city charter, they're not supposed to identify themselves as board members at specific government hearings, etc. And we run into a situation on 2 occasions where maybe not done intentionally, but there was a sense of some misrepresentation there. And what we're doing is amending our bylaws to state that if anyone indicates that they are a member of the board, then they need to indicate that they're not speaking on behalf of the board.
We'll emphasize that when we do the training.
So we're incorporating that in our bylaws, and that's my report for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have the CEO of Safe Horizons patiently waiting by to give us a tour.
I just have a quick announcement because I didn't want to do this over email. It's been a pleasure working with you. I'm actually going to be moving to a new role within the Blasio administration. I start in May. I'm really excited, but I love all of you, and I will stay in touch. And it's been an honor working for Gail and Aldrin and Joan, everyone at the VP's office, and that's likely what catapulted me into this new role. So thank you so much for being here.
Motion to adjourn?
I want to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network and Safe Horizon. Yeah.